Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, presented and brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate you being here as we have another transfer portal recap to get to you here. We were going to have this one out sooner, but I screwed up on my timing with TJ here. TJ, always on time, always ready to go with this kind of stuff. So, TJ, thank you for dealing with my mishaps and being here to talk about the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the transfer portal.
Hey, no problem at all. And don't worry about it. I'm not sure my wife would agree with your assessment, but I appreciate the kind words.
Well, just tell her to watch more podcasts where you're always on time. And,
Exactly. That's exactly right.
there you go. So TJ, you have a podcast, The Common Fan. I listen to it every Monday morning. You guys do a great job. You're entertaining. You do a good job covering the team. And I think you just had your first scheduled prediction episode of the year. I'm sure you'll have 2 or 3 more. But tell people about The Common Fan.
Sure. Common Fan Podcast. It's me and 2 co-hosts. Like we do year round, and we are all Husker football all the time. That's kind of our commitment to our listeners, because the appetite never wanes for Nebraska football content in among Husker Nation. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us anywhere you get your audio podcast. You can also go to commonfan.co and get all of everything sort of in one place there. But we normally do 2 episodes a week during the season, and then 1 a week in the off season. We have taken a few minutes on most of our recent episodes to talk a little bit of Husker hoops, because we are in uncharted territory with this basketball team. This sort of thing doesn't happen. Like people who don't follow Nebraska sports, I try to tell them, like, this doesn't happen. Like, even when we're good, it's like we're hoping to get into the top 25 and hoping to get into March Madness. We're a top 10 team, which is crazy, and they've had some really big wins. So anyway, we have been talking a few minutes of hoops our last few episodes, but we're pretty much all Husker football all the time.
I was gonna say, you have to at least mention this hoops team right now and everything.
Yeah.
So at least give them their credit a little bit. I'm on a Iowa radio show once a week on Mondays. I typically make an appearance and just talk through Big Ten basketball stuff with them and everything. And they Nebraska is a hot topic for them, especially Price Sanford and everything else. So
I'm sure.
The Iowa radio shows are paid attention to you, Nebraska basketball people out there, and Price Stanford and what he's got going on. Anyway, this episode is about Nebraska Cornhuskers football transfer portal recap. Been a couple weeks now, but the Huskers have done a good job in the portal. I think that they lost some talent, but they also brought in some talent, and they have brought in what looks to be their starting quarterback for next year after Dylan Raiola makes the exit. Now, I know Dylan Raiola has been talked about a bunch, but it wouldn't be a transfer portal recap if I didn't bring him up to get your thoughts on him. TJ, the rumor started early, and there was a lot of people kind of wondering, would this be the year? Because there was also a rumor about it last year, and I think a lot of people thought this looks like it could happen, but the injury is also questionable. Eventually it does happen. What was kind of your reaction and the reaction from the Cornhuskers fan base on Dylan Raiola transferring out?
I think a lot of the at least if you go by social media, I think a lot of people are over Raiola, which seems odd. We've tried to keep it really fair on our show because he did a lot of good things for the program, right? And one thing I always try to point out is he worked really hard. He was always the first guy in the room watching film or whatever, going through the playbook, whatever it might be. He always faced the music, bad game, bad result, whatever. He took accountability after the games and that sort of thing. He was a good face for the program. I think he generated a lot of excitement for the program coming off of almost 10 years of no bowl games, and really kind of this is uncharted territory for the football program in the bad way, where the basketball team's in uncharted territory in a good way. Uncharted territory for at least for those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s. This is like as bad as we've ever seen of Nebraska football. The last 10 years of the kind of the Riley Frost eras mainly. And so, Raiola took us to back-to-back bowl games, and I think maybe got some interest from some recruits and some transfers that maybe wouldn't otherwise have been there. And so he did a lot of good things for the program. Like, I think it's really easy just to like trash him and say, go, good luck in Oregon or whatever. Right. I do think also though that for 2 years, so he was there for Rhule's second and third years. I just think it was like a little too, everything became about him all the time. And it seemed like, there's a lot of rumors, hard to know what's true, but it seemed like the staff was sometimes tap dancing around ever saying anything critical of him. And it seemed like they were trying to sort of shoehorn an offense to fit him versus maybe what they had in mind for what they were going to do early on. And then also, again, you hear different things, but I think he kind of held out for more money going into year 2. The rumor was he wanted even more money going into year 3. And suddenly we saw it was a strange series of events before he entered the transfer portal where we fired his uncle, who had been the offensive line coach going back to Frost, actually. We fired his uncle, and then his brother, who's a year or 2 younger, had been committed, I think, but maybe he's 26 class, a couple years younger. His brother suddenly decommits. And so everybody was kind of like, doesn't seem like he's going to be sticking around. And then sure enough, he decommitted as well. I think it had just kind of run its course. I don't think I think there's a lot of promise there. I think he might go to Oregon and be surrounded by better offensive line play, more talented receivers, and maybe shine. And that might make like Husker fans heads explode a little bit. But I just think it was time. Also, and I know we'll get into this. I mean, you look at what we've done since. Anthony Colandrea, the quarterback we got from the transfer portal, is clearly a dual threat, clearly a running quarterback. We brought in not one, but 2 offensive line coaches. We brought in Jeep Wade from Georgia Tech to be the offensive line coach. And then we brought in Lonnie Tinsley from South Carolina to be the run game coordinator. And then we'll talk about the offensive line haul, which may have been the best position group, best work of any position group in the transfer portal. So you add it all up. I mean, Husker fans, I think, are very much in prove it mode, but I think they're kind of frothing at the mouth to see, okay, are we going to actually really commit to pounding the rock here instead of having somebody drop back and throw it 40 times a game? And, are we going to have a running quarterback? Like a running quarterback alone that's enough to get Husker fans salivating. So I think everyone's sort of anxiously optimistic about the direction, but a lot of people are just, I got to see it in August and September and
for sure.
For
sure. Yeah, and I kind of had the same read on Raiola a little bit. It's like when he left, I was like, okay, this does stink because he's a 5-star talent. You just had him for 2 years, and you would think, year 3 is kind of like your money year with a guy like that. Like, okay, we went through the struggles of a new starter, but it also was like, what you were hearing about the injury was like, is he even going to be able to, do spring practice, fall practice? How's that going to look going into the season if he can't do those things? And then everything else around it with, like you said, he kind of became the face, not a face of the program, but the face of the program, which isn't necessarily bad, but I do think people want it to be about the program and not maybe one player. And I'm not trying to take a shot here at Dylan. I'm not saying that he tried to make it all about him. It just kind of naturally became that. So
probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah. But now you have Anthony Colandrea, and this really signals to me that Dana Holgorsen is probably going to start running the offense more of what he wanted. He's always been a guy that kind of wants to utilize the quarterback's legs, it feels like. And Raiola, as much as he did have a good arm and everything else, he did not have the quickness and the agility to be that guy. He could take off and run and do some nice things every now and then, but he just didn't have the quickness and the agility to really form an offense around that. Do you feel like that's kind of the same direction here with Anthony Colandrea? And obviously Danny Kaling comes back, TJ Lateef is sticking around. Feels like this quarterback room has a lot of guys with some legs that can utilize them in the future moving forward.
Yeah, they're all at least more mobile than Dylan, right? Like Lateef, I don't know if you would call it Lateef like a run first quarterback, but he can run, right? Yeah. Kalen as well. He was a 4-star guy out of Bellevue West. He was in the same recruiting class as Raiola, spent a year at Nebraska, transferred to Virginia, was the backup at Virginia this year, saw some meaningful snaps. And then now he's coming back to Nebraska. And so Kalen, I think he'll be a redshirt sophomore. And then, Colandrea, I mean, all expectations are that Colandrea is the guy. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. So every expectation is that Colandrea is the guy for 2026. And he's got some big numbers. He spent 2 years at Virginia and then the last year at UNLV. But he's got, over 7,500 yards passing. it was 49 touchdowns, I think was the number. I had it pulled up and now I can't find it. So I think that's the, I mean, I think that one of the biggest, well, we have questions on both sides of the ball, but one of the biggest questions I think is like Holgorsen came in 9 games into the 2024 season to kind of like fix the offense on the fly. And so 2025 was his first full season as offensive coordinator, first chance with a full off season. And it was better, but it looked a lot of the same. I think everyone was thinking it would be a little more dynamic in many ways. And so I think everyone is like, are we going to rip the Band-Aid off and maybe make some more significant changes to what we've been doing on the offensive side of the ball and you think of Dana Holgorsen, you think of like explosive offenses putting up huge numbers, right? And I think Rule has a certain mindset that he wants to run the ball and run clock and be a defensive first team. And his 2024 and 2025 defenses 23 and 24 defenses were really good. Kind of fell off in 25, especially the last 3 games. But I mean, I think that's hopefully the idea is let Holgorsen cook a little bit more, pound the rock a little bit more, whether that's with your your running quarterback or others, and carve out more of an identity that fits the team versus an identity that fits a certain player.
For sure. And I think that's the best way to go, it sounds like to me. And I don't think we'll ever get back to the days of the, super explosive offensive numbers, just with the way the college football has changed and the strategy and, the clock rules and different stuff like that. But there's no reason why a Dana Holgorsen offense can't be recognized as one of the highest production offenses in college football.
It just needs to be better, JR.
Yes.
It needs to be better than it's been.
There you go. All right. I won't set expectations too high. Well, something that definitely could make it better is some better offensive line play. You alluded to possibly that being the case with some of these transfer portal additions. Talk about some of the portal additions, whether that's on the offensive line, other places that have you and other Husker fans excited.
Yeah. So I mentioned the 2 new coaches, the 2 new assistant coaches, and then honestly, I think they spent probably a good chunk of the money they had to spend on their offensive line haul in the transfer portal. So we got Brendan Black, who's an interior offensive lineman coming over from Iowa State. He's a senior. I still don't know how to pronounce his last name. Babalad, I believe is his last name, from South Carolina. He's an offensive tackle. He's a redshirt junior. And then Paul Mabenga from LSU. We beat out Alabama and others for him. He's a redshirt junior as well. And so I think, coming back, you've got Justin Evans, who will be your starting center, and Elijah Pritchett, who will be one of the starting tackles. And I think the idea is these other 3 guys are plug and play guys on the other 3 spots on the offensive line. We talked a little bit on our show, Rule brought in just in terms of numbers of guys, he brought in pretty big offensive line classes pretty much every year he's been here. And so it's kind of like, okay, year 4, should some of these guys be breaking through a little bit? And I think that's the hope, that they're at least in the 2 deep. But they clearly wanted to prioritize the offensive line. You also never know, like maybe the new offensive line coach shows up and says, I need some guys who can do some different things or whatever. But by and large, I think the best, and actually the QB haul, like, after Dylan left, we had a backup leave, and it was only Latif left in the room, and he had an injury at the end of the year. So the fact that we added Colandrea and Danny Kalen back is significant for the room. But so other than, those 2 rooms are probably 2 of the most significant, but on the offensive line, that's probably like the best haul they got of any position group.
Well, and Owen Chambliss too, right? The linebacker from San Diego State coming over. I think they brought over another guy from San Diego State as well, the defensive coordinator coming over from there. I remember talking about him and being pretty excited about him coming over. And obviously, I think he was a leading tackler, and at San Diego State at the very least, he may have had one of the leading tackles in the nation too, I think. Yeah,
Rob Orich was San Diego State's defensive coordinator. We hired him to replace John Butler, who the staff who Rule parted ways with. I think linebacker is probably the other one that's up there in terms of a good ads for a position room in the transfer portal. Chambliss, you're right, is a junior coming over from San Diego State. The other one is Dexter Foster from Oregon State. who had a really, I mean, I know Oregon State was kind of a dumpster fire, but he had a really good year. And then Will Hawthorne from Iowa State is more of a redshirt freshman, more of a depth piece, I think. But there's a lot of excitement. There was a need there, I think, at linebacker. We needed help there. And at least Chambliss will know how to run Orich's system. So there's a lot of excitement there. And then, yeah, you mentioned we brought in a safety as well, Dwayne McDougal from San Diego State. So Orich brought a couple of guys. We tried on, I think, a couple of their edge rushers, and some of the Texas Techs of the world with all the oil money came swooping in and beat us out for those guys. But I think linebacker is the other room that folks are excited about. On top of that, I shared this on our show. I actually married an Oregon girl, and her cousin got married recently. And at the wedding, her uncle told me that Dexter Foster was the best player on Oregon State's team last year. So you only get the wedding reception intel on the Common Fan podcast. Okay, let me be clear on that. So some good intel there on Dexter Foster.
Well, we appreciate you sharing a little with us here on the Big Ten Huddle as well.
Absolutely.
Very, very prestigious stuff. And I will say, like, just because a player comes from a team that maybe didn't have the best year, I always tell people Stephen Daly from Kent State went to Indiana last year. Kent State was 0-12, and he came to Indiana and led the nation in tackles for loss in the regular season. So
right, yeah, I mean, there can still be good players on those teams, right? And then the other thing, Trent Bray, who was the head coach who got fired, was Nebraska's linebackers coach under Mike Riley. I mean, he's a longtime Oregon State guy, but he's a linebackers coach and a defensive guy at heart. So, and he was a really good, I think, linebackers coach and a pretty good defensive coordinator. So you hope some of that rubbed off on the young Foster as well.
For sure. All right. Final thing to get to here, and I know this is not always everybody's favorite subject to spend time on, at least the fans that listen to it, but I do always find it interesting. But players that left Nebraska in the transfer portal, you have Keona Davis, Michael Hartzog, some of the guys like that. Do any of these guys leaving concern you? How do you feel like they replaced them in the transfer portal? Just maybe some of the losses for the transfer portal in Nebraska in the transfer portal that maybe you feel like impact the team.
Well, the first one, and it didn't go to the transfer portal, he's going to the NFL, is Emmett Johnson. Wow, but he was only a junior. And so we talked on our show many times throughout the season, like we should probably brace ourselves for the fact that he's not going to come back after his sort of special season started unfolding. Mm-hmm. But we thought maybe in the era of players being able to get paid, just throw a bunch of money at him, start talking Heisman campaign, all the things, right? Try to get him to come back. But that one hurts as much as anything. Yeah. Absolutely love Emmett Johnson, a guy who was so committed to the program and I think we predicted on our show that he would have the best year of a Nebraska running back since Amir Abdullah in 2014. I think he probably had a better year than Amir did if you look at the numbers.
And impact to the team and valuability. And
exactly.
Like that.
Exactly. I mean, he seemed to get stronger and better as the year went on. And so just love Emmett on our show forever. So that's a huge one. He's going to the NFL, rightly so. Like he should go get paid, right? And limited shelf life for running backs in the NFL, all the cliches. We didn't lose a ton of guys that were like, oh no, losses in the portal. Most of them were depth pieces who never played, if I'm being honest. Malcolm Hartzog hurts a little bit just because he had been around for so long. But sometimes, I don't know, it always hurts less to me when it's like a guy it feels like he's been here for 6 or 7 years. He has 1 year of eligibility left and probably just wants like a fresh start in a new scene and maybe try to go make more money somewhere else. Like, I don't know, like that one. And we have like 417 defensive backs on the roster. So it feels like we'll figure something out there. Keona Davis hurts a lot because, I mean, the defensive line is a big question mark. I think, we did an episode where we graded our portal haul position by position. Defensive line haul got by far the lowest grade. And so you're kind of hoping for some of these guys to hit and then some of your younger guys to really step up. But there's a lot of question marks there. And so Keona Davis has tons of talent and really flashed at times. And I think he was only a sophomore this last year. So that one hurt as much as anything. I actually didn't even see where he landed, but
Miami.
Did he go? Oh, did he go to? So, like I said, pretty good squad down there. Yeah. So that one, I think that one hurts as much as anything. And I mean, the other big one is obviously Dylan, but we talked all about that and his Oregon. The other thing that's fascinating to me about Dylan is he's going to go sit for a year. Now I'm sure he's going to get paid. You know, Uncle Phil is, I'm sure, making sure everybody's getting paid a nice chunk of change in Eugene. But he probably needed a year to sit wherever he went. That probably would have helped him a lot. So anyway, we talked all about Dylan, but yeah, Keona Davis is the other one. That one hurts.
Yeah, I get that. And it's such a prioritized position as well, the defensive line and everything else. And it's a hard position to get out of the portal. So, you know, even like Oregon fans were, you know, kind of freaking out a little bit when they were losing depth pieces, when they had the entire defensive, you know, starting defensive line coming back. It's a position group you never really want to see leave, but it's also a position group where you can have guys who can show out in the first year because they've just been getting bigger. We'll see what happens, but it could happen. So TJ, definitely appreciate you coming on here and talking with us about the Cornhuskers transfer portal recap. Is there anything else transfer portal wise that we did not hit on that you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Nope. It's going to be a long off season in Husker Nation, and we're all hankering to see what it looks like in come August. So we'll see.
We will see for sure. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, TJ, for coming on. Everybody, do check out the playlist with all the transfer portal recaps. We still need to get Purdue and Maryland. I plan to get to them next week. Had a very busy week this week, so it was tough to get some of these done, but I do plan to get to those, and that should finish it out for all of our transfer portal recaps. So check it out. Check the playlist. Check your teams, your rivals, everybody out there, as we ask generally the same questions to everybody, and everybody has the goods. They have the bads, and if you like the goods, you like the goods. If you like the bads because you're a rival, you'll hear the bads as well. So thanks for being here, everybody. We appreciate it. Have a good one.